The broken-down cabin stood shrouded in the early morning mist, its weathered planks barely holding against the chill wind that whispered through the towering pines. The crooked roof sagged under years of neglect, shingles missing like scattered teeth, and the faded paint peeled in long strips, revealing patches of raw, gray wood beneath. A single cracked window stared blankly out toward the dense forest, the glass smeared with dirt and time. The small porch sagged precariously, the loose railing creaking softly with each gust. It was a place forgotten by most, nestled deep enough in the woods to be swallowed by the thick shadows of oaks and firs. Emma Collins stood at the edge of the narrow dirt path leading up to the cabin, her breath visible in the cold air despite the early season warmth. Her hand rested protectively on her round belly, swollen now with a life that had come unexpectedly, yet irrevocably, into her world. She was alone, save for the sparse belongings packed tightly into the back of her aging sedan, parked a short distance away, the engine still warm from the drive. Her eyes traced the outline of the cabin, taking in every flaw and imperfection. The place was hardly the sanctuary she had envisioned in moments of desperate hope, but it was hers. She had bought it on a whim, a reckless purchase fueled by exhaustion and the urgent need to escape. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. The forest all around was quiet, except for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant call of a crow. Emma inhaled deeply, the scent of damp earth and pine filling her lungs. It was the kind of quiet that could be both a balm and a torment, depending on the day. Today, it felt like a fragile promise, a chance for something new, a chance to breathe free from the chaos she had left behind. Her fingers grazed the coarse fabric of her sweater as she stepped forward, the wooden porch groaning beneath her weight. The door hung slightly ajar, its hinges rusty from disuse. Pushing it open, Emma was greeted by a dim interior, thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. Shafts of pale sunlight cut through cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting long, angular shadows across the uneven floorboards. The walls were bare, save for a few faded nails where pictures might once have hung, and the remnants of peeling wallpaper curled at the corners. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but from the weight of what lay ahead. She set down her bag carefully, mindful of the uneven floor, and moved further inside. The room was small, cramped, but it held a strange kind of possibility. She ran her hand along the rough wooden table near the back wall, the surface scarred with scratches and stains, evidence of a life long past. Her fingers lingered there, as if trying to draw strength from the worn grain. She had no family to turn to, no close friends who understood what she was going through. The pregnancy had come as a shock, a sudden shift that upended everything she thought she knew about her life. Her relationship with her mother had frayed into silence after a bitter argument months ago, and the city apartment she once called home was now a memory, lost to eviction and unpaid rent. The nights spent sleeping in shelters or on friends' couches were behind her now, but the fear of what came next still clung tightly. Emma pulled out a folded piece of paper from her pocket, the contract for the cabin, signed and stamped just days ago. It was a fragile lifeline, a tangible proof that she had made a choice to fight for herself and the child growing inside her. Her eyes closed for a moment as she pressed the paper to her chest, steadying her racing thoughts. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the loose shutters and sending a shiver through the thin walls. Emma moved to the window, wiping away years of grime with her sleeve. Beyond the glass, the forest stretched endlessly, a sea of green and shadow, that both terrified and fascinated her. She imagined the baby's first cries echoing in this quiet, the walls absorbing the sounds of new life and hope. A sudden creak from above startled her, and she looked up to see a loose board shift on the ceiling. The cabin was full of these small, unsettling noises, the groans of settling wood, the whisper of the wind through cracks. But instead of turning away, Emma felt a strange comfort in their presence. They reminded her that the cabin was alive in its own way, a shelter that had weathered storms and seasons long before she arrived. She stepped back and surveyed the room again, noting the layers of dust and the clutter of forgotten debris. Old newspapers yellowed with age, broken glass, and the scattered remnants of a life abandoned. A faded, moth-eaten armchair sat in the corner, its fabric torn and stained, yet holding an air of quiet dignity. Emma imagined herself sinking into it on cold nights, the baby nestled close, finding warmth in the stillness. Her gaze drifted to the fireplace, its hearth cold and empty now, but once a source of warmth and comfort. She pictured the crackling flames that would soon chase away the chill, the scent of burning wood mingling with the crisp forest air. It was a vision she clung to, a future where this broken cabin would be transformed into a home. Emma's fingers brushed against the edge of a small, weathered trunk tucked beneath the window. She knelt down, heart fluttering with a mix of curiosity and caution, and lifted the lid. Inside, she found a jumble of old photographs, yellowed letters tied with faded ribbons, and a cracked pocket watch frozen in time. Each item was a fragment of the cabin's past, a silent testament to the lives that had unfolded within these walls. She picked up a photograph, edges curled and torn, depicting a young woman standing at the edge of the forest, her eyes bright and full of hope. The woman's smile was tinged with a sadness Emma couldn't place, but something about it spoke to her own journey, the quiet resilience of those who dared to dream despite adversity. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, scattering a few loose papers across the floor. Emma rose quickly, gathering the scattered memories with gentle hands. The cabin, with all its imperfections and ghosts, was now her refuge. It was a place where she would face her fears, confront the unknown, and build a new life. Outside, the sun began to rise, casting a pale gold light over the trees. Emma stepped back onto the porch, the dawn breathing warmth into the cold morning air. She looked out over the endless forest, the broken cabin behind her, and felt the first fragile stirrings of hope. Her journey was just beginning. 3 months earlier, Emma sat on the worn edge of her cramped apartment bed, the dim light from a flickering bulb casting long shadows across the peeling wallpaper. The tiny room felt suffocating, the stale air thick with anxiety. In her trembling hands, she held the small white plastic stick, its single, unmistakable line, confirming a reality she hadn't dared to face until now. She was pregnant. Her breath hitched as she stared down at the test, the weight of the news crashing into her like a wave. The months ahead were a vast unknown, filled with fears and uncertainties she couldn't yet name. Outside the cracked window, the city pulsed with indifferent life. The hum of traffic, distant sirens, and the murmur of late-night revelers. Those sounds felt alien to her now, reminders of a world she was rapidly drifting away from. Mark's voice echoed in her mind, sharp, cold, and distant. Just days before, he had packed his bags, the finality of his departure sinking deep into her bones. He had been her partner for 3 years, but their relationship had frayed under the pressure of mounting bills and unspoken resentments. When she told him about the pregnancy, his eyes had darkened with fear and anger, his dreams of a future that didn't include a child shattering between them. "Emma, I can't do this." he had said, slamming the door behind him, the sound reverberating through the empty apartment. She had wanted to scream, to plead, but instead she curled into herself, the silence closing in like a suffocating shroud. Losing her job at the publishing house had only deepened the abyss. The company's sudden bankruptcy left her adrift, her carefully constructed life unraveling in a matter of weeks. The eviction notice arrived like a cruel punctuation mark, a final blow that left her scrambling to salvage what little she had left. Friends offered temporary refuge, but their homes were crowded, their patience thin. Shelters were full, with waiting lists stretching into months, and the thought of spending nights in a noisy, impersonal dormitory terrified her. Desperation had driven her to the internet, where in a haze of exhaustion and hope, she stumbled upon the listing for the cabin. It was a reckless decision, an impulsive purchase made with the last of her savings. But it represented something she desperately needed. A place of her own, a sanctuary away from judgment and chaos. Back in the apartment, Emma's fingers traced the faded wallpaper, the peeling edges curling like the fragile threads of her own unraveling life. She recalled the nights spent clutching her swollen belly, tears streaming down her face as she whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. The future was a jagged cliff, and she was teetering on the edge, unsure if she would fall or find footing. The memories were sharp and raw. The cold hospital corridors after a fainting spell, the lonely walks beneath streetlights that blurred with tears, the endless nights of sleepless worry. She had tried to reach out to her mother, hoping for comfort, but their last conversation had exploded into bitter accusations. Emma's choice to keep the baby had been met with disbelief and rejection, severing the fragile ties that once bound them. Yet amidst the turmoil, there was a strange flicker of resolve. The pregnancy was no longer just a source of fear. It was becoming a beacon, a reason to fight, to rebuild. The small life growing inside her was a quiet rebellion against despair, a testament to strength she hadn't yet fully recognized in herself. One evening, as rain battered the thin window panes and thunder rolled across the city skyline, Emma sat at the kitchen table, clutching a letter she never expected to receive. The envelope had arrived from a distant attorney, its contents revealing an inheritance from a great aunt she barely remembered. A woman named Agnes, who had lived a solitary life in the countryside. The cabin had been hers, left behind as a final gift to a family she never truly knew. The news brought a surge of conflicting emotions. Disbelief, hope, and fear tangled together in a confusing knot. The idea of leaving the city, of starting over in a place so removed from everything familiar, was both terrifying and strangely thrilling. The cabin was old and worn, but it was a chance, a fragile thread of possibility in a world that had offered so few. Packing up her life was a slow unraveling. She sold what she could, leaving behind furniture, clothes, memories too heavy to carry. Each item lost felt like a small death, a farewell to the life she had known. But with every box sealed, the weight of the past lifted slightly, replaced by a cautious optimism. The night before her departure, Emma lay in the emptiness of the apartment, the silence pressing in around her. She traced the curve of her belly, whispering promises of safety and love to the child within. The road ahead was uncertain, but she clung to the hope that the cabin in the woods would be a refuge, a place where she could heal, grow, and prepare to bring new life into a world that had so often seemed unkind. Morning came with a sky streaked in pale pinks and grays. Emma paused at the threshold of the apartment one last time, the keys cold in her hand. She locked the door behind her, the click echoing like a final goodbye, and stepped into the unknown. The drive to the cabin was long and winding, the city gradually giving way to stretches of open road and dense forest. Emma watched the landscape blur past, the trees growing taller and thicker, their shadows deepening with every mile. Her hand rested on her belly, steadying the fluttering nerves within. The weight of the past months pressed heavily on her shoulders, but beneath it all, a quiet determination began to take root. When the narrow dirt path appeared, lined with wildflowers and tangled underbrush, Emma felt a flicker of something she hadn't known in a long time. Anticipation. The cabin emerged from the trees like a forgotten relic, its broken roof and peeling walls a mirror to her own fractured journey. But it was a beginning. She parked the car and stepped onto the porch, the old wood creaking beneath her feet. The cold air bit at her skin, but she welcomed the sharpness, the clarity it brought. The forest surrounded her like a protective embrace, the silence both a challenge and a comfort. As she pushed open the door and stepped inside, Emma took a deep breath, the scent of damp wood and earth filling her lungs. The cabin was imperfect and worn, but it was hers now, a place where she could face the past and build a future. The journey ahead would not be easy. Fear and doubt still lurked in the corners of her mind, whispering that she might fail. But beneath it all, a steadfast hope endured. A hope that in this broken cabin, amidst the shadows and silence, Emma and the child she carried could find their way home. The morning light filtered weakly through the grimy windows, casting a pale glow on the cabin's worn interior. Emma stood in the center of the main room, her fingers tracing the rough edges of the peeling wallpaper, the faded floral pattern curling away from the cracked plaster beneath. The air smelled of damp wood and dust, thick with the residue of years left untouched. Every breath she took stirred the stale stillness, as if waking the house from a long, reluctant slumber. The cabin was far from the sanctuary she'd hoped for. Broken glass littered the floor near the window, catching the light in sharp, jagged flashes. The floorboards creaked beneath her weight, some warped and uneven, as if protesting her presence. A threadbare rug lay in tatters by the hearth, its colors muted and faded. Yet, despite its flaws, the small space held a strange kind of promise. A blank canvas for a new beginning. Emma moved slowly, her eyes scanning the room with a mixture of hope and caution. She set down the canvas bag she'd carried from the car and reached for a broom leaning against the wall. The bristles were stiff and frayed, but it was the best she could find in the dusty corner. With tentative strokes, she swept the layer of dirt and leaves that had gathered over the years, the gentle swish of bristles against wood breaking the profound silence. As she worked, her gaze caught on a faded photograph pinned beneath a loose floorboard near the hearth. Kneeling carefully, she pried at the edge of the board, revealing a brittle black and white image, yellowed with age. The photograph showed a woman standing in front of the cabin, her dress fluttering in a breeze that seemed frozen in time. Her eyes held a curious mix of determination and melancholy, her smile faint but genuine. Emma hesitated, fingertips hovering above the fragile paper before she lifted it gently from its hiding place. She studied the woman's face, searching for some connection, some thread that tied this stranger to the place she now called home. The photograph was a whisper from the past, a secret waiting to be uncovered. Emma carefully slid it back beneath the floorboard, promising herself she would return to it later. The cabin's small kitchen was little more than a corner with a rusted sink and a cracked countertop. But Emma set about clearing away the cobwebs and debris with a quiet determination. She imagined the meals that might be prepared here someday. The scent of fresh bread baking, the clatter of pots, and the soft murmur of lullabies sung in the fading light. It was a fragile dream, but one she clung to fiercely. Her fingers brushed against a chipped ceramic mug resting on a shelf, its once bright pattern dulled by time. She lifted it carefully, feeling the weight of memories it might hold. Somewhere beyond these walls, stories lived. Stories of laughter and sorrow, of life lived in quiet dignity and resilience. The cabin's single bedroom was tucked behind a narrow doorway, the door hanging crooked on its hinges. Emma stepped inside, the light dimmer here, filtering through a small, grimy window. The room was empty save for a rusted bed frame and a threadbare mattress stained with age. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight as she ran her hand along the cracked wooden floor. Despite the neglect, Emma saw potential. She pictured the space transformed. Fresh linens, soft blankets, the gentle glow of a lamp casting warmth against the cold walls. This room would cradle her child's first dreams, shelter them from the night and the unknown. Outside, the forest whispered through the broken windows, leaves rustling like distant voices calling her name. The wind carried the scent of pine and earth, mingling with the faint aroma of wildflowers blooming just beyond the cabin's reach. Emma stepped onto the porch, the wood groaning beneath her feet as she looked out over the tangled undergrowth and towering trees. The isolation was profound. The nearest town was miles away, a small cluster of houses and shops that seemed worlds apart from the silence enveloping the cabin. Yet, there was comfort in the solitude, a chance to heal, to find strength in the rhythms of nature and the slow passage of days. Emma's fingers traced the chipped paint of the railing, her thoughts drifting to the journey that had brought her here. The months of turmoil, the heartbreak and fear, all leading to this moment of fragile hope. She pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the gentle movements of the child within, a steady pulse of life that anchored her amid uncertainty. As the day wore on, Emma moved through the cabin with renewed purpose. She cleared broken glass from the floor, swept the corners where dust had gathered thickly, and stacked old newspapers and debris into piles ready for disposal. Each small task was a step toward reclaiming the space, turning it from forgotten ruin into a home. Between chores, she paused to rest, settling into the threadbare armchair in the corner. Its fabric was torn and faded, but it offered a quiet refuge. She ran her hand over the worn armrest, imagining the stories it might tell. Years of whispered secrets, moments of joy and sorrow shared in this small, battered room. Her eyes drifted to the fireplace, its hearth cold and empty. She knelt to peer inside, the blackened stones stained with the ghosts of countless fires long since extinguished. She pictured the flames that would soon dance here, the warmth spreading through the cabin on cold nights, the crackling sound a lullaby for two. A sudden breeze stirred the curtains, sending a shiver through the room. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, the chill reminding her of the work still ahead. The cabin was a blank slate, but it was also a challenge, a test of her resolve and resilience. As evening approached, the pale light softened, casting long shadows across the floor. Emma lit a small candle she'd found in a drawer, its flickering flame casting a warm glow against the cracked walls. She sat quietly, the silence wrapping around her like a fragile cocoon. Her thoughts returned to the photograph hidden beneath the floorboard. She made a silent promise to uncover the cabin's secrets, to understand the lives that had come before hers. Each memory buried in these walls was a thread in the tapestry she was beginning to weave, a connection between past and present, despair and hope. Outside, the forest deepened into twilight, the sounds of night awakening, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of small creatures stirring in the underbrush. Emma listened, feeling both the weight of solitude and the gentle embrace of nature's rhythms. She closed her eyes, resting her hand on her belly. And for a moment, the cabin was no longer just a broken shelter. It was a home in waiting, a place where new stories would be written, where life would take root and flourish despite the shadows. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Emma felt a quiet strength rising within her, a determination to face the unknown and build a future from the fragments of the past. The cabin, with all its flaws and ghosts, was hers now, and she was ready to begin. The gravel crunched beneath Emma's boots as she stepped onto the narrow road leading away from the cabin, her breath rising in soft clouds against the crisp morning air. The forest loomed dense and silent behind her, its shadows retreating as the sun climbed higher. Ahead, the path wound through rolling hills toward the small town of Pine Hollow, a cluster of weathered buildings nestled between the trees, where she hoped to find supplies and perhaps a sense of belonging. Emma's heart thudded with a mix of anticipation and unease. The isolation of the cabin had offered solitude, but it was also a reminder of how far removed she was from the everyday world. Pine Hollow was her first step toward connection, a place where she could gather the essentials and maybe, just maybe, piece together the story of the cabin's past. The town appeared suddenly around a bend, its main street lined with faded storefronts and a scattering of parked cars. A general store with peeling paint stood at the corner, its windows cluttered with signs advertising everything from canned goods to farming supplies. A weathered wooden bench sat outside, where an elderly man dozed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Emma pushed open the door, the bell above jingling softly as she entered. The scent of old wood, fresh coffee, and the faint tang of sawdust greeted her. Inside, shelves groaned under the weight of goods, jars of honey, bags of flour, tins of tea, and rows of canned vegetables. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a dusting of gray in her hair, looked up from behind the counter. "Morning," the woman said, her voice warm but guarded. "You're new around here, aren't you?" Emma nodded, offering a tentative smile. "Just moved here. I'm staying in the cabin out by the woods." The woman's face tightened slightly, a flicker of recognition passing through her eyes. "The old cabin. Agnes's place, isn't it?" Emma's pulse quickened. "Yes. Do you know much about it?" The clerk hesitated, glancing toward the door as if wary of being overheard. Agnes was a quiet one, lived out there all alone for years. Folks in town didn't see much of her. She kept to herself mostly. Emma leaned in, curiosity piqued. Did something happen to her? Why did she leave the cabin? The woman's gaze dropped to the counter, her fingers absently tracing the worn wood. She disappeared some years back. Just one day she was gone. No note, no word. Some say she wandered into the woods and never came back. Others say she left to escape something, but no one really knows. A chill passed through Emma despite the warmth of the store. The mystery clung to the air like a shadow, deepening the cabin's allure and unease. She thanked the clerk and gathered her supplies, the weight of the town's whispered stories pressing on her mind. Outside, Emma wandered toward the diner, a small brick building with faded red paint and a neon sign flickering erratically. Inside, the air was thick with the aroma of frying bacon and freshly brewed coffee. The chatter of locals filled the room, punctuated by the clink of dishes and the hum of a radio playing old country songs. She found a seat at the counter, the worn vinyl stool creaking beneath her. The waitress, a woman with sun-streaked hair and a warm smile, slid a menu across the counter. "What'll it be, hon?" she asked, her eyes kind and curious. "Just coffee, please," Emma replied, her voice soft. As the waitress poured the steaming cup, a man sitting nearby glanced over, his expression curious but not unkind. He looked to be in his mid-40s, with hands calloused from work and eyes that held a quiet intelligence. "You new in town?" he asked, his voice low but friendly. Emma nodded. "Just moved into the cabin in the woods." He smiled faintly. That old place has a lot of stories, not all of them happy. "I'm trying to learn," Emma said, her gaze steady. "Do you know much about Agnes?" The man hesitated, then shook his head. "Not much personally. I'm Ben Adams, local historian. I've spent a good deal of time digging through town records and old newspapers. Agnes was a mystery to everyone here. Folks respected her privacy, but there were rumors. Loneliness, loss, secrets no one wanted to speak of." Emma's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "Do you think she left something behind? Letters, journals, anything that might explain what happened?" Ben shrugged. "Maybe. I've heard there's a hidden study or a room in that cabin where she kept her things. No one's been inside in years, though. Most folks are too scared or too respectful to pry." Emma felt a flicker of determination. "I want to find out. For her and for myself." Ben nodded slowly, respect flickering in his eyes. "If you want, I can help. There's a lot buried in this town's history, and some of it connects to that cabin." The waitress returned with Emma's coffee, and Ben took a sip of his own drink, his gaze drifting toward the window where the trees of the forest loomed like silent sentinels. As the day wore on, Emma mingled with the townsfolk, gathering bits of stories and fragments of memory. At the hardware store, a man spoke of Agnes's skill with woodworking, of intricate carvings found in the cabin's walls. At the post office, a woman recalled the rare visits Agnes made to town, always quick and quiet, her eyes haunted. Each conversation added layers to the mystery, painting Agnes not as a mere recluse, but a woman shaped by tragedy and resilience. The whispers carried subtle warnings about the woods, about the cabin, about forces unseen but deeply felt. Returning to the cabin as dusk settled, Emma felt the weight of the town's gaze upon her. The forest around the cabin seemed darker, the shadows longer, as if the land itself held its breath. Inside, the cabin's silence was thicker than before. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she lit a candle, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows on the rough walls. She placed the items she had bought neatly on the table. A few canned goods, cleaning supplies, a small radio to break the quiet. Her thoughts drifted back to the stories she had heard, the disappearance, the loneliness, the secrets buried beneath years of silence. Agnes's life and disappearance had become a tapestry woven into the fabric of Pine Hollow. And now Emma was entwined in it too. She sat by the window, staring out into the darkening woods, the photograph she had found hidden beneath the floorboard pressed gently in her hand. The woman's eyes seemed to hold a silent plea, a story waiting to be told. Emma's resolve hardened. She was no longer just a visitor in this place. She was becoming a part of its story, a keeper of its secrets. The town, the cabin, the forest, all were threads in the fragile fabric of her new life. As night deepened, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the weight of untold stories and lingering ghosts. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the steady heartbeat of the child within, a steady pulse of hope amid the shadows. Tomorrow, she would begin to unravel the mysteries of the cabin and the woman who had called it home. For now, she let the quiet embrace her, the promise of discovery and renewal stirring in the stillness. The morning sun filtered softly through the grimy windows of the cabin as Emma settled onto the creaking wooden floor. The faded photograph of the woman from beneath the floorboard resting gently beside her. The air was heavy with dust, and the silence wrapped around her like a fragile veil, broken only by the distant call of a bird and the faint rustling of leaves outside. The cabin, with its peeling wallpaper and warped floorboards, held more than just memories. It held secrets waiting to be uncovered. Emma's fingers traced the edges of the photograph, the woman's eyes reflecting a quiet strength mingled with sorrow. The image stirred a sense of kinship, a connection across time that pulled at Emma's heart. She folded the picture carefully and set it aside, then began to search the cabin more thoroughly, her eyes keen for anything that might reveal more about Agnes, the woman who had lived and vanished in this secluded place. Near the hearth, a loose floorboard caught her attention. Kneeling, she pried it open with a flat piece of wood, revealing a small cavity beneath. Inside lay a tightly bound leather journal, its cover cracked and worn, the edges frayed from years of neglect. Emma's breath caught as she lifted it gently, the weight of the past pressing into her palms. Opening the journal, the faded ink revealed Agnes's handwriting, delicate yet deliberate, each word a thread woven into the tapestry of her life. The entries began with mundane details of daily life, tending the garden, repairing the cabin, and the changing seasons. But as Emma read deeper, the tone shifted, revealing layers of loneliness, resilience, and a yearning for connection. One entry spoke of a loss so profound that it seemed to seep into every page. A child taken too soon, leaving Agnes adrift in a sea of grief. Emma's heart ached as she imagined the pain etched into those words, a silent companion to her own fears and hopes for the child growing inside her. The journal also hinted at a hidden study, a small room Agnes had transformed into a sanctuary for her thoughts and memories. Emma's curiosity ignited, and she rose to search the cabin for this secret space. Behind a sagging bookshelf in the main room, she found a narrow door concealed by an uneven layer of wallpaper. The hinges groaned in protest as she pushed it open, revealing a cramped, dimly lit room, lined with shelves cluttered with books, letters, and faded photographs. The air inside was musty, thick with the scent of old paper and forgotten dreams. Emma ran her fingers along the spines of the weathered books, some bound in cracked leather, others with brittle pages yellowed by time. Letters tied with faded ribbons lay scattered on a small desk, their cursive script hinting at stories of love, loss, and hope. She unfolded one carefully, reading words filled with longing and regret, addressed to someone named Thomas. The letters spoke of promises made and broken, of secrets kept in the shadows of the forest, and of a love that had endured despite distance and silence. Emma felt the weight of these untold stories settle around her, a tapestry of human experience woven into the very fabric of the cabin. As she explored further, Emma discovered a small wooden box tucked beneath the desk. Inside were delicate trinkets, a silver locket engraved with initials, a faded ribbon, and a pressed flower brittle with age. Each item was a fragment of Agnes's life, a testament to moments cherished and memories preserved against the relentless march of time. Emma sat quietly in the study, the journal open on her lap, surrounded by the tangible echoes of a woman who had faced loss and solitude with quiet courage. The parallels between their lives were unmistakable. Two women separated by decades, yet bound by shared resilience and the hope of new beginnings. Outside, the forest whispered in the breeze, the sunlight dappling through the leaves, casting shifting patterns on the cabin walls. Emma closed her eyes, letting the stories seep into her soul. a source of strength she hadn't known she needed. She knew the road ahead would be difficult. The cabin was a vessel of memories, some painful, others hopeful, and it was now her responsibility to honor that legacy. The journal, the letters, the hidden study, they were pieces of a puzzle she was determined to solve, fragments of a life that had shaped this place long before she arrived. Emma rose, her body aching, but her spirit fortified. She moved through the cabin with renewed purpose, tidying the study as best she could, arranging the letters and journals in a neat stack. The act was both practical and symbolic, a way to reclaim the space and breathe new life into forgotten stories. Later, as twilight settled over the forest, Emma lit a small candle in the study, its flickering flame casting warm shadows against the shelves. She sat by the window, the journal open beside her, and allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The weight of loneliness that had once threatened to consume her felt lighter now, replaced by a growing sense of belonging. Agnes's words, her life, and her struggles were no longer distant echoes, but a living presence guiding Emma forward. The cabin was no longer just a shelter. It was a bridge between past and present, a place where stories intertwined and new chapters began. Emma pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the steady heartbeat within, a silent promise of hope and renewal. As night deepened, the forest outside hummed with life. The rustle of leaves, the call of distant owls, the gentle sigh of the wind. Emma closed the journal gently, the pages whispering secrets only she could hear. Tomorrow, she would continue to uncover the cabin's mysteries, to piece together Agnes's story and, in doing so, write her own. For now, surrounded by the quiet strength of a woman she had come to admire, Emma allowed herself to dream of a future where the cabin was filled not with shadows of loss, but with light and laughter. The journey was far from over, but in this hidden study, amidst the dust and memories, Emma found a quiet refuge, a place where hope took root and the past could finally begin to heal. The night pressed close around the cabin, wrapping its cold fingers through the cracks in the weathered walls. Inside, the silence deepened, thick and unyielding, broken only by the creak and groan of old timber settling into the cold earth beneath. Emma lay awake in the threadbare armchair by the fireplace, her hand resting protectively on her belly as shadows flickered from the dying candle's flame. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines like distant voices, carrying an eerie symphony of rustling leaves and faint, unidentifiable sounds that set her nerves on edge. The isolation pressed upon her more heavily in the darkness. The cabin, once a place of fragile hope, now seemed to breathe with a life of its own, its secrets and sorrows seeping through every splintered board and cracked pane. The shadows stretched long and menacing, twisting into shapes that teased the corners of her vision, daring her to look closer, to confront the fears she'd long tried to push aside. A sudden thud echoed from upstairs, sharp and unexpected, causing Emma's heart to leap into her throat. She sat frozen, breath caught, listening as silence slowly reclaimed the space. Her mind raced, conjuring images of small animals trapped within the walls or perhaps branches scraping against the roof. Yet, beneath the logical explanations lurked something more primal, a gnawing unease that whispered of unseen watchers and stories left untold. She rose cautiously, the chair protesting beneath her weight, and made her way toward the narrow staircase leading to the attic. Each creak of the steps beneath her feet echoed through the stillness, a reminder of the cabin's fragile bones. At the top, the air was colder, heavier, thick with dust and the scent of forgotten years. Emma's fingers brushed along the rough wooden railing as she peered into the dim space beyond. Shadows danced on the sloping ceiling, and the faint outlines of old furniture and crates filled the room like ghosts of another life. A sudden draft stirred a loose curtain, sending it fluttering like a ghost's sigh. Emma shivered, telling herself that the cabin was simply old, that the sounds and shadows were nothing more than the house settling, the wind playing tricks. But sleep would not come easy. Her thoughts tumbled relentlessly. Memories of past losses, fears for the unborn child, the daunting prospect of raising a life in this isolation. The loneliness wrapped around her like a shroud, threatening to suffocate the fragile hope she clung to. Back downstairs, Emma lit another candle, its warm glow pushing back the darkness, if only slightly. She settled once more into the armchair, wrapping a threadbare blanket around her shoulders. The flickering flame cast long shadows, and for a moment she imagined the cabin filled with voices, whispers of Agnes, of the life that had come before. Instead of fear, a strange comfort settled over her, as if the past were reaching out to steady her trembling spirit. The nights grew longer and colder, and with them, the cabin's eerie sounds multiplied. Footsteps that seemed to echo from empty rooms, faint scratching at the walls, the soft creak of doors opening and closing on their own. Emma resisted the impulse to flee, choosing instead to face the unsettling presence with quiet resolve. She began to keep a journal of the occurrences, documenting the strange noises and fleeting shadows, trying to make sense of the haunting. Her days were spent in a delicate balance, repairing the cabin by daylight and confronting the shadows by night. Each creak and whisper became a challenge to her courage, a test of her will to stay and build a life here. The isolation pressed on her, but it also forced her to look inward, to confront the demons she'd carried silently for years. One evening, as a storm raged outside, lightning casting jagged flashes across the sky, the power flickered and died. The cabin plunged into darkness, the howling wind rattling the windows like restless spirits. Emma clutched the candle tighter, her breath visible in the sudden chill. The storm's fury seemed to awaken something ancient in the cabin's bones. Suddenly, a soft cry echoed from the other room, a sound raw and urgent, stirring something deep within her. Emma's heart pounded as she moved toward the source, the candlelight trembling in her hand. The sound was like a whisper, a plea. And though no one was there, the moment felt charged with meaning. She sank to the floor, the candle casting a small circle of light around her. The storm raged on, but inside the cabin, a calm settled, a fragile peace born from the acceptance of the unknown. Emma realized that the cabin, with its shadows and secrets, was not a place to fear, but a place to learn from. Its whispers were stories waiting to be heard, its creaks the echoes of lives intertwined with her own. Days passed, and Emma's strength grew. She found solace in the rhythms of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, the steady heartbeat of the earth beneath her feet. The cabin's eerie sounds became less threatening, more like companions on her solitary journey. A local carpenter, Jack, arrived one afternoon, breaking the spell of solitude. His rough hands and steady presence brought a practical warmth to the cabin. As he worked to repair the sagging porch and patch the broken shutters, Emma found herself sharing stories of Agnes and the strange nights she'd endured. Jack listened without judgment, sharing his own tales of loss and healing. Their friendship grew slowly, a quiet tether to the world beyond the woods. Jack's visits became a balm, his laughter and kindness softening the edges of Emma's fear. Together, they worked to restore the cabin, blending the old with the new, weaving a thread of hope through the fabric of the past. Yet, the cabin's mysteries remained. Some nights, Emma still heard the soft footsteps, the distant whispers, the rustling shadows. But instead of fleeing, she faced them with courage, knowing that she was not alone. The cabin was a vessel of memories, a guardian of stories, and she was now part of its enduring legacy. One night, as Emma sat by the fireplace, the wind outside rising to a howl, she felt the first sharp pangs of labor. The cabin seemed to hold its breath, the shadows stilling as if in anticipation. With Jack's steady hands guiding her through the storm, Emma brought new life into the world amid the creaking walls and whispering woods. In that moment, the cabin was transformed from a place of fear and solitude into a sanctuary of strength and renewal. The shadows that once haunted her became a testament to resilience, the whispers a chorus of hope. Emma cradled her newborn daughter, the future unfolding like the first light of dawn through the broken windows. The cabin, with all its flaws and secrets, was no longer just a shelter. It was home. The morning sun filtered softly through the cabin's cracked windows, casting a warm glow over the worn wooden floors and faded wallpaper. Emma sat in the threadbare armchair, her newborn daughter cradled gently in her arms, the tiny breath steady and warm against her chest. Outside, the forest stirred with life, the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds. And for the first time in months, the cabin felt less like a refuge from the world and more like a true home. A soft knock at the door startled Emma, and she glanced up, her eyes meeting those of a tall man standing hesitantly on the porch. Jack, the local carpenter who had become a steady presence in her life, smiled warmly, a basket of fresh bread and wildflowers in his hands. "Thought you might like some company," he said, stepping inside as Emma rose to greet him. Jack's visits had become a comforting routine, a thread of normalcy woven into the fabric of her new life. His quiet strength and easy laughter softened the edges of her solitude, and their growing friendship offered a balm to the wounds left by loss and fear. As Jack settled into a chair, Emma shared stories of Agnes, the woman who had once called this cabin home, and the secrets she had uncovered in the hidden study. Jack listened intently, his eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and respect. "There's a lot this town doesn't talk about," he said quietly. But Agnes, she was more than just a recluse. She had a fire inside her, even if it was hidden beneath layers of pain. Their conversations deepened, weaving together tales of the past with hopes for the future. Jack spoke of his late wife, a loss that had shaped his own journey of healing. Emma found solace in his openness, the shared understanding bridging the gaps left by years of silence. Together, they worked to repair the cabin, transforming its broken walls and sagging porch into a space filled with light and warmth. Jack's skilled hands patched the holes where the wind had whispered through, and Emma painted fresh coats of pale green over the peeling wallpaper. Each stroke was an act of renewal, a reclaiming of the space as a sanctuary for new beginnings. One afternoon, as they hauled lumber for the porch, Emma noticed the way Jack's eyes softened when he looked at her daughter, a tenderness that spoke of unspoken hopes. Their friendship began to hint at something more, a quiet romance blossoming amidst the healing. But beneath the surface, the mysteries of the cabin lingered. Emma still found herself drawn to the hidden study, poring over Agnes's journals and letters with Ben Adams, the local historian who had offered his help. Together, they pieced together fragments of Agnes's life, a story marked by love, loss, and secrets entwined with the very land they walked. Ben's knowledge of the town's history and his gentle encouragement became invaluable. He shared old maps and photographs, revealing connections between Agnes and other families in Pine Hollow. Through their research, Emma began to understand the weight of legacy, the way the past shaped the present, and how stories, once uncovered, could heal old wounds. The community, once distant and wary, slowly opened around Emma. Neighbors stopped by with offers of help and homemade meals, their cautious smiles hinting at acceptance. The local librarian lent books on midwifery and childcare, while the postmaster offered to keep an eye on the cabin when Emma needed to travel. Yet, as the days grew longer and the season shifted, Emma sensed a subtle tension beneath the town's surface. Whispers of old grievances and unspoken fears threaded through conversations, shadows lurking just beyond the warmth of friendship. One evening, as Emma and Jack sat by the fire, a knock came at the door. Standing in the doorway was Maxwell Pierce, a sharp-eyed businessman whose presence sent a ripple of unease through the room. He introduced himself with a practiced smile, his gaze lingering on the cabin with an intensity that felt more like ownership than curiosity. "I understand you've inherited this property," Pierce said smoothly. "It's a valuable piece of land, rich with resources. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone." Emma's pulse quickened. The cabin, her sanctuary, was suddenly a point of contention. Pierce's interest was no longer academic. It was a threat. She sensed in him a determination that brooked no refusal, a desire to claim what he believed was rightfully his. Jack's protective stance beside her was immediate, his jaw tightening as he met Pierce's gaze. "This land means more than just money," he said firmly. "It's part of the community, part of the history here." Pierce's smile didn't waver. "Business is business. I'm sure we can find common ground." As he left, the weight of his visit settled heavily in the cabin. Emma felt the fragile peace she had built teetering on the edge. The fight to protect the cabin and the legacy it held was only just beginning. In the days that followed, Emma and Jack began rallying support from the townspeople, sharing Agnes's story and the importance of preserving the land. Meetings were held in the town hall, voices raised in defense of heritage and community. The battle lines were drawn, but amidst the tension, Emma found strength in the bonds she had forged. The cabin, once a symbol of isolation, had become a beacon, a rallying point for hope, resilience, and stewardship. Emma embraced her role as protector, determined to honor the legacy of the women who had come before her and to ensure a future where the land would nurture rather than be exploited. Through it all, the quiet moments with Jack, the shared laughter, the gentle touches, the whispered dreams, reminded her of what she was fighting for. Not just a place to live, but a home filled with love and belonging. As spring blossomed around Pine Hollow, the cabin stood restored, its walls echoing with new stories and old memories. Emma, holding her daughter close, looked out over the land with a sense of purpose. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she was no longer alone. Together with the community, with Jack, and with the spirit of Agnes guiding her, Emma stepped into the future, ready to face whatever storms might come, and determined to protect the fragile hope blooming in the heart of the woods. The late afternoon sun cast long golden rays across the cabin's worn floors as Emma sat at the small wooden table, a stack of weathered papers spread before her. Her newborn daughter rested peacefully in the cradle nearby, soft breaths punctuating the quiet room. The fragile calm was a stark contrast to the turmoil that had marked the days since Maxwell Pierce's visit, a storm gathering just beyond the horizon. Among the letters and journals she had uncovered in Agnes's hidden study One particular envelope caught Emma's eye. Bound with a faded blue ribbon and sealed with a delicate wax stamp, it bore no address or date. With careful fingers, Emma untied the ribbon and unfolded the brittle paper inside, the handwriting elegant yet trembling with emotion. The letter was a confession, a sorrowful plea from Agnes herself. She wrote of a pregnancy lost too soon, a secret she had carried alone within the cabin's walls. The words spoke of hope and despair intertwined, a mother's love shadowed by grief and isolation. Agnes's voice echoed through the years, laying bare the loneliness that had defined her final days. Emma's eyes welled with tears as she read, the connection between their lives growing ever more profound. The pain Agnes endured was no stranger to her own heart. The fear of raising a child alone, the weight of abandonment, the desperate hope for a future that might never come. The letter also revealed Agnes's wish for forgiveness, a plea to those she had left behind, and a hope that her story would not be forgotten. It was a fragile bridge across time, a testament to the resilience of women bound by love and loss. As Emma folded the letter carefully, a sense of resolve settled over her. Agnes's story was no longer a secret buried in dust. It was a living legacy, a call to honor the past by shaping a better future. Word of the letter spread quietly through Pine Hollow, stirring the community's consciousness. At the town hall meeting convened to discuss Pierce's development plans, Emma shared Agnes's story, reading the letter aloud with a voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. The room, filled with familiar faces, grew silent, the weight of Agnes's words settling over the crowd like a gentle rain. The townspeople listened not just to a tale of loss, but to a plea for compassion and stewardship, a reminder that the land held memories deeper than any market value. Ben Adams stood beside Emma, his eyes reflecting pride and hope. Together, they unveiled further discoveries. A will crafted by Agnes, explicitly forbidding mining or development on the estate, and a journal passage revealing her grandfather's suspicions about Maxwell Pierce's true intentions. The revelations galvanized the community, transforming whispered fears into collective action. Volunteers gathered to organize petitions, local businesses pledged support, and a renewed sense of purpose blossomed among the townsfolk. Amidst the growing resistance, Emma found strength in unexpected places. Jack's steady presence provided comfort, his hands rough but gentle as they tended to the cabin and to her weary spirit. Their bond deepened, woven through shared determination and quiet moments stolen beneath the canopy of stars. Yet, the threat of Pierce's plans loomed large. Emma received ominous notes slipped beneath her door, warnings veiled in polite language but unmistakably clear. A gas leak in the cabin, narrowly avoided, sent a shudder through her resolve, reminding her of the stakes at play. But surrender was not an option. With the support of the community and the legacy of Agnes guiding her, Emma resolved to fight. Not just for the land, but for the memories and lives intertwined with it. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma stood on the porch with her daughter in her arms, the cool breeze carrying the scent of pine and promise. The cabin, once a hollow shell, now pulsed with life and hope, a sanctuary forged through resilience and love. She whispered a vow to Agnes, to the generations of women who had come before, and to the daughter cradled close to her heart, that their stories would endure, that the land would be protected, and that the future would be shaped by courage and compassion. The fight ahead would be long and uncertain, but in the quiet strength of the cabin and the unwavering support of her community, Emma found the courage to face whatever storms lay ahead. Together, they would honor the past, defend the present, and build a legacy that would carry forward for generations to come. The days grew longer as spring unfolded its gentle warmth over Pine Hollow, the forest awakening with a chorus of birdsong and the scent of blooming wildflowers. Inside the cabin, Emma moved with a quiet purpose, transforming the once neglected space into a haven for her daughter and herself. Fresh linen softened the bed, the walls brightened by pale pastel paint, and a small rocking chair nestled in the corner, ready to cradle the new life that filled the house with hope. Each morning, Emma rose early, the first light filtering through the worn curtains to greet her. She would sit by the window, watching the forest come alive. The dance of sunlight on leaves, the soft rustle of branches, and the gentle hum of life stirring all around. The cabin, once a place of shadows and silence, now echoed with the soft coos and cries of her child, a melody that filled the space with warmth and promise. Emma's hands, once trembling with fear and uncertainty, now moved with confidence and tenderness as she cared for her daughter. The challenges of motherhood pressed upon her, but so did the profound joy found in each small smile, each grasp of tiny fingers. The cabin had become more than shelter. It was a sanctuary where healing and growth intertwined. Outside, the community rallied around Emma's vision. Volunteers arrived with tools and supplies, eager to help restore the cabin and preserve the land's natural beauty. Gardens were planted, pathways cleared, and plans drawn for a sanctuary, a place where women in crisis could find refuge, strength, and hope. Emma's dream was blossoming, rooted in the legacy of Agnes and nurtured by the collective will of Pine Hollow. Amid the transformations, Emma found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. The pain of loss, the battles fought against darkness and despair, had carved a path to resilience and grace. Agnes's story was no longer a distant echo, but a guiding light, a testament to the enduring strength of women who faced hardship alone. Letters from townsfolk filled her mailbox, words of gratitude, encouragement, and shared stories of struggle and survival. Emma cherished each message, a reminder that she was part of a larger tapestry of lives woven together by courage and compassion. One afternoon, as she rocked her daughter gently in the sunlight, Emma uncovered a box tucked away in the cabin's attic. Inside were more letters and photographs, remnants of Agnes's life and the community she had touched. Among them was a faded photograph of Agnes standing beside a young woman, their arms linked in a silent bond of sisterhood. The discovery deepened Emma's resolve to honor Agnes's memory by creating a place of healing and connection. The sanctuary would be a living tribute, a bridge between past and present, where women could find solace and strength in the embrace of community. As summer approached, the sanctuary took shape. A modest building nestled among the trees, its walls adorned with murals depicting stories of hope and resilience. The cabin's transformation mirrored the journey within, a testament to renewal and the power of legacy. Emma stood at the edge of the forest one evening, the sky painted in hues of pink and gold. Her daughter's laughter echoed behind her, a sound that filled the air with light. The weight of the past had lifted, replaced by a profound sense of belonging and purpose. She whispered a silent thank you to Agnes, to the women who had come before, and to the new life she held close. The sanctuary was more than a building. It was a promise, a beacon for those who would come seeking refuge and renewal. The journey had been arduous, marked by shadows and storms. But Emma had emerged stronger, her spirit intertwined with the land and the stories it held. The sanctuary stood as a testament to the enduring strength of women, a place where hope could take root and flourish. As night fell, the cabin and the Yao sanctuary glowed softly under the stars, a symbol of healing and community. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the steady heartbeat of her daughter and the rhythm of the earth beneath her feet. The legacy of Agnes, of all the women who had faced hardship with courage, lived on, in the walls of the cabin, in the hearts of the community, and in the bright future unfolding before them. Emma breathed deeply, ready to embrace the days ahead, knowing she was no longer alone. Together with the sanctuary, the town, and her daughter, she would carry forward the legacy of strength, resilience, and hope that defined their shared story. The first light of dawn spilled softly through the cabin's windows, casting a delicate glow over the freshly painted walls and the gentle rise and fall of Emma's sleeping daughter, nestled in the crib. Outside, the forest stirred to life, birdsong weaving through the crisp morning air and leaves trembling with the promise of a new day. The sanctuary beyond the cabin's edge stood quietly, its windows aglow with the soft hum of early activity, a place transformed from a dream into a beacon of hope. Emma rose quietly, careful not to disturb the peaceful slumber that had at last settled over the small life she had brought into the world. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stepped onto the porch, the cool air filling her lungs with the scent of pine and earth. The world beyond the cabin was alive with possibility, the legacy of generations etched deep into the soil beneath her feet. She thought back to the journey that had brought her here, the shattered moments of fear and loss, the whispered secrets hidden in the walls, and the quiet strength drawn from Agnes's story. Each step had been a thread woven into a tapestry larger than herself, a connection to the women who had come before and those who would follow. The sanctuary, a modest yet welcoming structure nestled among the trees, was alive with activity. Women from the town and surrounding areas moved through its rooms, seeking refuge, healing, and the chance to rebuild their lives. The space was filled with laughter and tears, whispered prayers and shared stories, a living testament to the resilience and compassion that had taken root in this place. Emma watched from the porch as children played in the garden, their laughter ringing clear and bright. Volunteers tended to the flower beds and painted murals depicting scenes of strength, hope, and the enduring bonds of sisterhood. The land, once threatened by greed and neglect, was now a sanctuary in every sense, a place where wounds could begin to heal and new beginnings could flourish. Ben Adams approached quietly, carrying a stack of books and documents related to the town's history. His eyes met Emma's with a warmth that spoke of shared triumphs and the unspoken promise of continued vigilance. Together, they had uncovered the layers of the past, bringing to light stories that had long been buried beneath silence and fear. Jack joined them, his hands rough but steady, a reminder of the tangible work that had helped transform the cabin and the sanctuary. His smile was gentle as he reached out to take Emma's hand, grounding her in the present even as the past whispered through the trees. The fight against Maxwell Pierce and his plans had been arduous, marked by moments of doubt and danger. But the community's steadfast resistance, fueled by the revelation of Agnes's will and the deep-rooted love for the land, had prevailed. The estate was protected, its future secured not by contracts alone, but by the collective heart of those who called this place home. Emma felt the weight of responsibility settle comfortably on her shoulders, a mantle she would carry with pride and humility. The sanctuary was more than a building. It was a living legacy, a promise to honor the past by nurturing the future. She thought of her daughter, Elena, a name whispered in memory of Agnes and the strength that had guided her. The child's bright eyes and gentle spirit were a daily reminder of the resilience that could be born from hardship. As the sun climbed higher, Emma led a small gathering beneath the ancient oaks, where the community had come together for a celebration. Voices rose in song and story, weaving a tapestry of shared history and hope. The air was filled with the scent of wildflowers and the warmth of connection, a stark contrast to the loneliness that had once defined the cabin's walls. Emma spoke softly, her words carrying the weight of experience and the lightness of newfound hope. She honored Agnes and the women whose lives had shaped the land, acknowledging the strength found in vulnerability and the power of community. Her voice wavered with emotion as she vowed to continue the work begun by those who had come before, to protect the sanctuary, to support those in need, and to ensure that the legacy of resilience would endure. As the crowd dispersed, Emma lingered beneath the trees, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the forest met the sky. The journey was far from over, but the path ahead was clear, illuminated by the bonds forged in pain and the promise of renewal. She returned to the cabin, the heartbeat of her daughter steady and sure within her arms. The walls, once echoing with silence and shadows, now embraced the light of life and love. Emma knew that this place, the cabin, the sanctuary, the land, was home. It was a testament to the strength of women, the power of community, and the enduring hope that could rise from even the darkest of nights. Together, they had woven a legacy of courage and compassion, one that would carry forward through generations. And as the dawn broke fully over Pine Hollow, Emma embraced the future with open arms, ready to face whatever came next, grounded in the knowledge that she was part of something greater, a family forged by history, bound by love, and sustained by hope.